Okay, so I wanted to talk today a little bit about digital literacy, and our main theme and the reason why we present this topic is to help everybody build confidence with technology. So we'll cover a variety of different types of tech and devices to get you a little bit more knowledgeable about what's out there, and how to use it. And so I just want to quickly mention that this program is funded by a number of sponsors who make programs like this possible. So our funders include RBC, the Government of Ontario, the Government of Canada, and Entente Education, formerly Retired Teachers of Ontario. Okay, so what is digital literacy? When we talk about digital literacy, we are referring to the ability to have the skills and confidence to use technology safely, effectively, and responsibly in daily life. So this means knowing about what's out there and how to best use it, and then making good use of all the tools that are out there. And this involves devices like computers, tablets, and phones, and being confident with how to use them. So not just having a phone and a tablet, but also knowing what to do with them and being comfortable in using them, using common tools for communication like email, social media, and video calls, seeking out reliable information online. It is very important to know what sort of things online are legitimate and which ones might not be as reputable, and knowing which information to select and attend to, protecting your privacy and recognizing the variety of scams that are out there. And then finally, understanding new and emerging tools, which today the biggest one is artificial intelligence. Digital literacy is very important because a number of things that we do every day are becoming more and more online. So whereas we could do our banking and our healthcare exclusively in person or through mail before, now there are a number of services in those fields that involve technology, which sometimes might be optional, but occasionally are required. So you might be forced to have, for example, a My CRA account. So you would need to know how to use that to be able to access your CRA information. If you want to stay in touch with your family, your friends, and your different service providers or the community, oftentimes you'll need to be able to effectively use your phone or your computer to communicate with them. If a lot of scams nowadays are operated through the phone, through email, and through fraudulent websites, so knowing how to select the ones that are legitimate and ignore or avoid the ones that aren't is very, very important to staying safe. And then technology provides a lot of benefits to making your everyday life easier and more enjoyable. So just getting the most out of those devices will help you to really reap those benefits as much as possible. So going into a couple of practical things, I want to talk about some device settings that relate to privacy and ease of use. The first is turning on automatic updates. Your phone or your computer might prompt you to update every once in a while. And this can be annoying since you'll get that pop-up, and until you do it, it'll keep reminding you. If you go into the settings, usually by clicking on that message or just digging around in the settings on your device, you can turn on automatic updates, which will happen usually during the night or when your device is not active. And just whenever an update comes out, your phone will let you know that it's going to do an update, or your computer will let you know it'll do an update, and it'll just do it when you're not using it. And so this is nice for not having to worry about doing it manually and not constantly getting those messages about needing to update. Updates usually provide increased privacy and security features, and they also patch what are called bugs. So they fix issues in their programs that help make the devices more secure. A lot of devices have the ability to modify text size, contrast, and audio for accessibility reasons. So if you have low vision, for example, there are ways of making the text and other elements on the screen larger so that even if you are constrained by the size of the screen of your device, you can make everything on it a little bit bigger. There are a number of ways to do this. Each device is different, but sometimes you can do it separately. So one, you can do it on the actual program you're using. So for example, you can change the size of text in emails, and that'll be just for emails, or you can change the overall text size on your phone or your computer. It is also useful to look through the privacy settings on your primarily your phone, but also sometimes your computer to locate privacy settings for your apps. This will be different on every device, but usually it'll be under something like privacy or permissions. And so here, this will allow you to see which apps and services on your device have access to which features. So what I mean by this is, for example, when you install Zoom on your phone, Zoom will ask for permission to use your camera and your microphone. And so for some apps, we want to give permission, and of course, it makes sense for Zoom to ask for your camera and your mic. But there are certain features that you might not want a certain app to have access to. So, for example, if you don't want your location to be accessed by a certain app, then either when you install it, make sure that you don't agree to this, or if you want to check the apps you already have installed and what they have access to, just go through your settings, look for permissions, and see which things are being accessed by which app. A lot of service providers now have call screening for spam calls. So my phone, I never set this up. It just sort of started happening one day, but I have a spam filter. So they'll be able to identify which numbers are probably going to be spam, and they will mark those on your phone so that when it comes in, it'll say probable spam or something like that. And then also, especially if you have a ringer on your phone, so not vibrate or silent, you might want to set up do not disturb periods for when you don't want to be disturbed. If you're on a call, for example, or if you're taking a nap, things like that, you might want to set that up so it doesn't wake you up or disturb you. Okay, now a little bit about email. Um, for email tips, email is a great way to communicate, especially through more official channels. So something you that is a little bit more formal than a text. And so email is a really great tool, and it's something I use multiple times a day. The first is, and this is not just for email, this is for anything, but use a strong password and don't share it. Your email can be a lifeline to a lot of services. If you forget your password, the pretty much, I think 9 times out of 10, the way to recover it is by getting an email. So you really want your email to be one of the most secure things that you have, in addition to things like your bank account. Because email is so prevalent and so popular, used by I think most of the world, there are a lot of scams going around on email. So when you open messages, just check to make sure that you trust the person who's sending you this message. And when I say to check who the message is from, this is not just the name of the person. So, when you get an email, it'll say the name, not just their name, but also the email address they're sending this email from. Since it is easy to pretend to be someone, so they can put any name that they want, but there's only one email address that can be claimed by someone at a time. So somebody might claim to be a friend of yours, but they might be emailing you from an email address that is different from the one that you trust. So that would be a sign that maybe something is going on. And so if the email contains any links or attachments of things that you can follow or download, before you do this, be 100% sure that you trust the person that is sending you this email. Certain emails might prompt you for what's called a read receipt, which just means that when you open the email, it notifies the person who sent it that you opened this email. And certain email programs will let you know that the email is doing this and ask for your permission. And so usually when this happens, I find it's common in a lot of scams. So I would not allow this permission. So if it says, do you want to send the person who sent you a message saying that you opened their email? I would say no to that, just to be safe. Also be cautious of urgent or unexpected messages, things from individuals you don't really expect to hear from, or emails at random times of the day or the night. These can sometimes be scams. So a lot of the scam emails that I get might be sent to me at 4 in the morning. They'll be from individuals that I have no idea who they are, and there isn't really any reason for them to be contacting me. And then finally, make sure that you keep your inbox organized, especially if you receive a large volume of emails at a regular period. It's very easy to miss emails, so just make sure you're staying on top of it and that you use folders to sort the emails that you have. So you can have a folder for all your banking information, a folder for things you need to follow up on, and so on. And then that you also turn on filters. So you block individuals you don't want to hear from and see if there's any spam filters that your email provider may give you access to. Okay, some tips for social media awareness. As I mentioned, go through privacy settings. So in addition to the app You might be able to go in on Facebook or Instagram, for example, and see what sort of privacy permissions you've given to the app, as well as how your data is being used. If you are someone who posts frequently or even infrequently on things like Facebook and Instagram, just think before sharing. As soon as you send or post something, as soon as you send it out, you're basically kind of broadcasting it. So even if you've got a limited number of Facebook friends, there's always a chance that whatever you post can go beyond just who you intend to see it. So make sure that you're being mindful of the fact that everything you post can be seen by someone you don't want seeing it. So be very mindful of the sort of information that you include in that post. And by this, I mean things like addresses, your current location, or where you plan to go at a certain time, any sort of personal details like your kids' names, things like that.
Your kids' pictures.
For a lot of social media platforms, there's the potential for fake profiles and messages, so people can pretend to be famous individuals like celebrities or politicians. Usually, a lot of social media platforms will have a verification stamp of some form or other that'll let you know that this profile really does belong to the person who claims to own it. But be mindful of the fact that if somebody messages you claiming to be a celebrity, might not necessarily be them. It probably isn't.
Hmm.
If you see any content that you're suspicious of, there's almost always going to be a report feature, usually in some sort of extra options. Like if it's on a post, there might be three dots that you can click, like a little button in the corner and report, or a little exclamation mark. But just if you see any of the stuff that you think is fraudulent, I'd recommend reporting it so that moderators of that website can take a more closer look and see
No,
what's going on.
they even have.
For detecting fake profiles, we have five common signs. One is a very generic profile, so very few details in their bio or generic or blank information. Of course, this might just be someone who's a very cautious social media user, so it's not a 100% sign, but oftentimes scammers won't really flesh out their profiles very much. They will often have a stolen or fake photo. I often see, like when on Facebook Marketplace, I see a lot of scam listings, and they almost always will use just a random other user's photo, and often it'll be something like a mom with her kids. Nowadays, also some profile pictures will be AI generated. So even if it does look like a really nice looking, legitimate person, this photo might just be stolen from a real person's account. Look at their connections with other individuals. If they have very, very few followers or otherwise are a huge following, or just sudden activity. Also look at if their profile is very, very new. So if they've created it in the last month or so.
Oh, that's a good one. It's
If
kind of.
they, yeah, so I see on Facebook Marketplace, there's often you can go and you can see the profile of the person who's making the listing. And I can tell pretty well now certain scam listings, and usually for furniture and stuff like that. And when I'm already suspicious of it and I go and I see that the profile was made in the last month, this basically tells me that this is almost definitely going to be a scam. Look for odd messages. If somebody reaches out to you who you don't know, some random user on Facebook or Instagram reaches out and asks for money or gives you random compliments, asks if you're going somewhere at a certain time, or sends you strange links, do not open those messages. Do not click any links. Um, and just if it's someone you know and they're acting weird, talk to them in person or contact them another way. But if it's someone you don't know, this is kind of weird, and I would just avoid this. And then finally, be cautious of a too perfect appearance. So people often expect scammers to, sort of look shady and kind of, not very trustworthy, but scammers are almost, just kind of regular looking people, and they're often professionals in what they do. So they will devote a lot of time to making their profiles seem very, very perfect or appealing in some way to get you to trust them. So just be mindful of this. Some tips for video calls. I know a lot of you will, everyone on here is on Zoom, so you have some amount of knowledge of how to use it. But make sure that when you are video calling, you're using trusted apps. And so these are the big ones, things like Zoom, Google Meet, FaceTime. WhatsApp is also a good one. And then if any of you are part of any organizations, some of them might use Microsoft Teams. That's another good one too. Some healthcare providers will also use, I think it's called Medio. So that's another trusted one that you don't have to worry about. If you're joining calls, make sure that you trust or can vouch for the reputation of the person or organization that is conducting the call. So here you can trust this call since it's through Entente and you have some experience with Entente, and so you can trust them. But if you get a link to some random Zoom call from someone you don't know, I wouldn't join that call. When you join a lot of video calling services, they'll often give you a little preview of your camera and microphone settings. Make sure that if you're joining a very busy room, that your camera or sorry, your microphone is off. It's up to you if you want to keep your camera on or not. That is your choice. And just be aware of what's visible in your background. So if you have certain things you don't want people on the call to see, just make sure that in the little preview before you join that none of that stuff is visible. If whatever service you use doesn't give you a preview, you can just turn the camera on your device, take a quick look, and then either adjust your position or turn on a background blur or some other filter to block that out. It is almost impossible nowadays to talk about digital literacy and being knowledgeable about online services without talking a little bit about AI, which is artificial intelligence. It's kind of hard to talk about AI very briefly, but I'll do my best to give a very shallow overview. AI is technology that can think, learn, assist, and solve problems in a very human way. And there are a lot of different AI services out there, things like voice assistants, chatbots, and translation tools, which is why it's hard to sometimes identify whether something is AI or not. So AI has been around for quite a while. It's become very, very popular in the last few years with the advent of programs like ChatGPT and Google Gemini. But there have existed AI programs and services for many years before then. One, for example, is predictive text on your phone, things like the autocorrect or just suggestions for what to type next. These are a form of AI by thinking about what you might likely be wanting to talk about and then filling in the blanks, correcting your mistakes, or suggesting new words that you might want to type. Devices like smart speakers and assistants like Alexa, Google Nest, and Siri are all a form of AI.
Is five.
Chat tools that answer questions or summarize content. So this, I think the most prevalent one for this would be ChatGPT, where you can ask a variety of questions and get answers or have it summarize content for you. And then finally, a face or a fingerprint recognition technology to unlock your phone or your laptop. I also want to talk a little bit about scams and how to stay safe from online scams. These can come in through a variety of channels, emails, texts, calls, social media posts, even websites. And there are certain tips that you can use to try to protect yourself. The first is just being very wary of urgent requests or prize offers. I think the most classic scam when people think of is that somebody emails you with several millions of dollars waiting for you to claim. Um, with this, it's just those sorts of things it's almost cliche now, but still every time you get it, it's pretty much always going to be a scam. And there's often a sense of urgency in these things. So the person will say that you have to take action in a certain limited amount of time. They might make threats that you have to act before a certain period. Otherwise, some, bad thing might happen. They might make some vague threats. These are to get you to act on impulse and not really carefully think through what you're doing, and to sort of fall into whatever scam they're trying to get you to fall victim to. Before sharing or believing information, just check with official sources. Anybody online can say anything, and these things can very easily go viral. So somebody can make a post with total nonsense information, and it can get picked up and get spread around and eventually make its way to you. And even if it looks very official and it, sounds maybe a little bit plausible, just check with official trusted sources before believing what it is that you're being told or sharing it with other people to avoid the spread of that misinformation. As I mentioned, if you get a link or an attachment, which is some sort of document or some file that's attached often to an email, if you get this from an unknown sender, just avoid clicking those links or listening to any of that information. You don't know where it's going to take you. You don't know the reputability of the individual or what they're sharing with you. So it's best not to follow those links. And then if you see any suspicious content or suspicious messages, there should be a way to report it somehow to then prevent other people from receiving this communication in the future. I want to talk about a couple common scams that we see out there. Some of these you might have seen before or have talked to someone who has maybe been victim to them or has received maybe some of these communications. The first is a CRA scam. So this is often a message from the CRA or sometimes um, an equivalent in a different country, but they'll be asking you for some sort of payment to rectify some sort of problem that there is, or they'll say that, you know, you are owing some amount in taxes, or there's something wrong with your security or your social security number, things like that. They'll often make threats and ask for money.
Eight.
These are going to very, very frequently be a scam. If the CRA needs to get in contact with you, they will do it either by calling you from their direct number, or it'll be something on your My CRA account if you have one, or through an official letter, which is, I think, most likely that you'll receive. If you do get some sort of communication from them, just check to make sure that it really is coming from the CRA. So, as I mentioned, for an email, check the email address. Is it really at CRA, .ca or .com or whatever it is, or is it a random individual's email address? Oftentimes, the communications they have will contain spelling,
Yeah.
grammar, and other formatting issues.
Mhm.
Those should be a pretty good sign that there's something going on there, and that this isn't an official communication.
That was six.
There are also advanced fee scams.
Mhm.
Sorry, just give me 1 minute. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. So what I want to talk about was advanced fee scams, and this is what I mentioned earlier, where we were promised a huge sum of money, but all you have to do is to send a smaller amount in advance. So they'll say there's $5 million waiting for you to claim. You just have to send $100 as a processing fee. You send that money off, and then you never hear from them again, unless it's to ask for more money. Um, avoid these. These are pretty much always a scam, and $100 might not seem like a lot, especially on the face of the 5 million you might receive. But this sort of money, it's not an insignificant amount, and if you get multiple of these messages, it really does add up. So there's no situation in which, you would legitimately be promised a huge sum of money, and you'd have to send some amount of money in advance first. What I see a lot of today is a lot of scams ask for payment in gift cards. This is because gift cards are much harder to trace, and so it's easier for the scammer to stay protected. Anytime somebody asks you for payment in gift cards, this is a scam. So I can say this quite, uh, you know, very broadly, and it applies to basically anything. No reputable individual or organization will ask for a payment in the form of a gift card.
Like Jim's been paid for.
Romance scams are a type of scam that involve some sort of element of human connection. The most common one is a romantic one. So it'll be somebody claiming that they're romantically interested in you, and then they ask for increasing sums of money. It doesn't necessarily have to be romantic in nature. It could be a variety of different relationships. So it could be, for example, somebody like a caregiver offering you certain services either as a senior or somebody with a disability. They can give you, help with whatever it is that you need. But the idea here is that they will ask for increasing sums of money, and it might start off very, very small. So they might ask for $10 or $15 here and there, which will gradually increase to larger and larger sums of money. The reason these scams work is because they really get at a person's vulnerability. So if it's somebody that is in need of some sort of help or is in need of a romantic connection, they're more likely to agree to whatever it is the scammer is promising. But also, they can take place over a very long period of time. So they can take months or even years. And these increasingly larger amounts of money initially don't seem like a problem. And because they increase so slowly, you don't catch on as much as if they were just to point blank ask you for $1,000. And so there are unfortunately stories of individuals losing hundreds of thousands of dollars to these scammers, and putting their homes, their cars, and themselves at risk through losing so much money. Grandparent scams are another very common scam, and it's, I think, becoming increasingly common nowadays. The general idea behind it is you get a call, often in the middle of the night, from an individual claiming to be your grandson or your granddaughter, saying they've gotten into some sort of legal trouble and they need your help. So they need you to send them money or come bail them out, whatever it is. but usually there involves some sort of transfer of money or personal information. These are successful because they contact a wide range of individuals. And so you might get a call from someone claiming to be your grandson, and it's very easy if you don't have a grandson to know that this is a scam. Um, but unfortunately, with how many scams there are, eventually somebody might get it right. So they will call you and, they'll claim to be a relative that you do have, and their voice will kind of sound similar over the phone. And so all these things kind of fall into place, even though it is a scammer. My best recommendation for staying safe with these scams is to have a password set up with your loved ones that only you and they know, so that if somebody calls you in an emergency asking for something like this, they first have to tell you the password. And if they can't tell you it, then it's going to be a scammer. If you don't have a password set up and you get a call like this, I would instead call back the person at a number you trust. These calls often happen in the middle of the night because you're less likely to think clearly about what's going on and again, instead act on impulse. Same with that urgency piece I talked about earlier. And the last one I want to talk about is phishing. Phishing is a very, very broad kind of umbrella term for a lot of different scams, but the idea behind phishing is to obtain some sort of personal information. Things like your full name, your birth date, your phone number, your email address, and your password to certain services.
Oh,
These can come in a variety of different forms, but one that we see often is an account update scam where you'll get an email from someone claiming to be an organization saying you need to update your password. They'll send you to a website where you can type in your password, which instead of updating it, will just send your old password to them that you just typed in that they can then use to access your account. So if you ever do get a message about having to update your password, I would, instead of following any links in the email that you receive, go and log
I've been getting
in
a lot of
the way that
those.
you normally do. So if it's Amazon, go to amazon.ca, log in there, and change your password on the website. And I just have some
I've
stats
been
up here
getting
on
a
the
lot
screen
through
that
the
you might have
bank.
looked at.
Yeah.
And it's as of September 30th of last year, there were over almost 34,000 reports of fraud, almost over 23,000 victims of fraud, and over $500 million lost to fraud. These numbers are lower than in 2024, which is nice to see, but these are still huge sums of money and a very large amount of individuals falling victim to frauds and scams. A couple more tips about protecting yourself against scams. One is to check the website credibility. So I have a little picture at the bottom. You can see here that there's a little padlock beside the URL or the web address of the website that you're visiting. And a little padlock there just means that your connection is secure. Without getting into any technical details, this just means that the information you are sharing with the website is being sent through a safe channel that isn't being accessed by
I need to know.
somebody else. Look for red flags like strange URLs. If you're on a website that you think belongs to a certain service like Amazon, TD, CRA, and so on, make sure that the link reflects this, that it does actually say like, td.com or whatever it is, and not just a random string of numbers and letters. Sometimes, though, for security purposes, when you're logging in, you might get a sort of a weird looking link. So just don't worry about those, but just make sure that you are logging in through an official website. If you ever have those, certain websites have high pressure countdown timers, they'll say you have to act fast. Like I mentioned with the urgency earlier, just be very wary of those. And those countdown timers are usually just a little video that plays on repeat. So if you're to refresh the website, the timer would just go back to 15 minutes or whatever it was at the beginning. When making payments online, just be very, very mindful that you trust the service you're using. Avoid it if you're not sure. So if you aren't sure that your payment is secure, I just wouldn't do it online. But things like PayPal and your banking website are usually secure as long as you do it on a secure network, as Deb and I were talking about earlier. Make sure that you're on a private network, so you're not out in public somewhere. You're at home on your own Wi-Fi network doing it there. And then be very careful with e-transfers. So if anybody shops on things like Facebook Marketplace and then makes payment through e-transfers, um, just be very cautious. And I would recommend using cash if you ever have to make a financial transaction with a stranger. If something feels off about anything that you're doing online, I would first just stop and double check. If you aren't sure about the information that you're receiving, double check with official sources. If you're unsure what to do, talk to someone. The safest bet with a lot of these things is to ignore or just say no. So if you get a call and it seems like a scam, I would just ignore them. I would not continue conversing with them. Just say no or just put down the phone. If you're on a web page that you think is suspicious, don't follow any links. Don't click on any, X's or buttons that they give you. Just close down your browser so the way that you normally would, or turn off your computer and restart it if you aren't sure how to do that. If you need help with any of these tech topics, talk to your family and friends, especially ones who are knowledgeable about technology. We provide a program every week called our Tech Talk. This is an hour session every Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. where I will talk about a variety of different topics, but we also have an open session where you can ask any questions you have. So if anybody is curious about attending these, please let me know. We can chat about that after the call.
I'm surprised he's saying to say anything because I would have.
Also, your library will often have a variety of programs. So I know that the Kitchener and Waterloo libraries both have tech help programs and sessions that they offer. And there's also certain reputable hotlines where you can get tech help and also assistance with frauds and scams. And I also want to really encourage the mindset of it's okay to ask for help. Everyone needs tech support. I do these tech education sessions and I talk about frauds and scams, but I have almost fallen victim to scams in the last few years. There are things that fool me too. Anybody can be a victim, and so it might be embarrassing if you make a mistake and you fall victim to these things, but it can happen to anyone. So there shouldn't be any shame involved in it. If you think you have been a victim of fraud, there's the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center that can offer help. I have their number down below if you'd like to write it down. Please feel free to. And I know they have a website as well that you can visit and you can talk with someone there in case you need any sort of help. Okay, so kind of summarizing what we talked about today, some helpful habits for digital literacy. Keep your devices updated, and you can turn on automatic updates so that you don't have to keep getting pestered with their notifications. This helps keep your devices on the newest form of software, which is usually the most secure one, and also helps your device run the best. If you ever need help, please ask someone. There is no shame in it, and it's better than you sort of second guessing your way through things and potentially falling victim to a fraud or a scam. If you have any important files, make sure to back them up. So if you have photos you don't want losing or important documents, make a second copy and keep it somewhere that in case something happens to your laptop or hard drive, that you have a second copy of it stored somewhere else. And then for any of your accounts, but especially things like email and banking, use strong and unique passwords to make sure that your accounts are being kept safe. For passwords and privacy, this is something that is kind of an annoying topic to a lot of people, but it really is helpful. For passwords, it's really recommended to have at least 12 characters. That's a mix of letters, numbers, and symbols. Oftentimes, the account will prompt you to, like, it'll say you have to use a certain number of letters, numbers, and symbols, but some accounts don't have that. Even if they don't have the requirement, I would really recommend doing this since it makes that password much, much harder to crack. There's a new service that has been rolled out over the last few years called two-factor authentication or 2FA. It's also called
Yeah.
multi-factor authentication or MFA. What this is essentially when you log in to a certain account, even if you get the email and password right, it will also send you a message to your email or your phone with
Yeah.
usually a one-time code that you have to enter to then get into your account.
Yeah.
A lot of people find this very annoying, and I totally understand why, but it is an excellent way to keep your account even more secure, since it means that if somebody does gain access to your email and password, they would also simultaneously need to have your phone on them to be able to get that code, which, if it's very, very unlikely that that's the case. Um, so it's an extra step, but it really does help protect your account. And the flip side of it is if you ever get a message on your phone or your email saying, here's a code to sign in, and you didn't sign into that account, that means that somebody else has gotten access to your password. So I would
Yeah.
immediately go change the password in that service and make sure that you keep your account safe, since you would only get that request if somebody else was trying to sign in.
Mm.
So if
Good
you've got the
advice.
code, that means they haven't gotten in yet. But if there's sometimes it's a yes or a no button that you have to click, don't press yes unless you know who it is that's signing in. So that's a very important tip. And I can talk about this more afterwards in our Q&A period if anybody has any questions about that. I keep my passwords in a password manager, which is just on my browser. So if you use Safari, Chrome, or Firefox, sometimes it'll prompt you and ask you if you want to save your password. I haven't heard of any security issues with using that, as long as it's on a device that only you use. So only save it on your own laptop or your own phone that nobody else uses. So I wouldn't save it, of course, on any other public device or a device that you share with someone else. Okay, just few last notes on privacy and safety. Be aware of what's being tracked. You can see on your phone and your computer what apps have access to which permissions. And when you first start using an app, you'll be asked to give permission. So read carefully what is being asked and say yes or no as needed. Only share information with people you trust and be very cautious of communications from individuals who you don't know. If you would like to use a new device or a program, read about a little bit about it first. So read about, what it can do, what sort of security issues there might be with it, and just get yourself knowledgeable about what it is before buying it or subscribing to it or whatever it is that it is. Make sure that you are on trusted websites. So check the URLs or the web addresses that you see at the top of your screen. Make sure that you're on the website that you think you are on and just become familiar with your devices and apps, settings and permissions to just be as safe as you can. Okay, that's all I have. I will stop the recording in just a second, and then everybody can turn on their mics and cameras if they wish, and we can do a Q&A period.